Where is Kim Kardashian? Where is Cardi B? Where is Taylor Swift? Where is Beyonce? 40 million people are about to lose their food assistance, and they do not care because they are part of the system. Wake up!
Ma'am, it's not their fault. Go to Congress. Interesting, because while you're busy defending their silence, a billionaire just donated $130 million to help the Pentagon pay staff during the government shutdown. Do you know what fascism is? It's the merging of state power and corporate power. The government shrinks and then essentially becomes a private military for the wealthy and for corporations to use. It goes beyond corporations lobbying the government to get their laws passed. We're talking about handing governmental power to corporations and to wealthy individuals who have so much money they're essentially a country unto themselves. And before you start saying that they worked and earned that wealth that is unethically amassed. They're underpaying workers, stealing their wages, using slave labor, and many other horrifying tactics. It is simply impossible to become that wealthy by working for it. Anybody, including celebrities who have hundreds of millions or is a billionaire, has engaged in some of the most exploitative practices against their fellow human beings in order to get that rich. When we hear that a donation of $130 million has been sent to the government, alarm bells should be ringing. That is creeping fascism if it ever had a definition. Looking at us straight in the face, that is the privatization of state expenditure. And not just any state expenditure. We're talking about the military operations that the Pentagon oversees. When I said that fascism means individual wealthy people and corporations turn government forces into private armies and militias, that is what I mean. There are equally wealthy people who, for all intents and purposes, based on their public persona, don't support Trump. So where are they? It is completely valid to ask this question when the right-wingers are getting donations of $130 million. The privatization of the state means that these wealthy people who have gotten wealthy because of our dollars become the state. I've said time and time again, the celebrities are billboards for corporate, governmental, and capitalistic interests. And we see examples of how those three things merge all the time. Jay-Z, heading the NFL halftime entertainment, is part of these things fusing together because the NFL is paid by the military to push pro-America propaganda. And the celebrities that are invited to perform are there to launder that propaganda. So to then look at those celebrities who have now fused with governmental interests and say, hey, pay up, especially when they have built their wealth off of us paying to see them, buying their songs, buying their materials, giving them our attention that they then monetize, it is completely valid to ask,
where are the celebrities?
If you are Christian and defending billionaires while arguing against SNAP benefits, you have profoundly misunderstood the teachings of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is to fit a camel through the eye of a needle. Jesus said in multiple gospels that when I was hungry, you fed me, and how you treat the least of these is how you treat me. And so if you are arguing against poor people, poor children, 40% of SNAP recipients are children, then you have missed when Jesus said, the way you treat the least of these is the way you treat me. Jesus was very clear that blessed are the poor, for they will inherit the kingdom, and woe to the rich, because they have received their consolation. Jesus says, you cannot be rich and follow me. And for any of the people who actually claimed repentance, like Zacchaeus, the tax collector, he had to sell half of everything he owned and repay everyone he defrauded. Rich people can absolutely receive salvation and be saved and go into heaven. They just have to repent for the wealth that they have accumulated, because you cannot become a billionaire without exploiting the labor of other people. And Jesus was very clear that he was on the side of the poor and that we should do everything we can to feed and care for the poor and not defend wealthy people, especially billionaires. If we want to make a line for what it means to be rich or wealthy, billionaire can be the line.
Donald Trump wants families who got food stamps to pay it back to the government. Quite simply and quite frankly, the facts of the fucking story are that the Republicans control the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House. They're the ones who shut down the government and making millions of Americans lose food stamps. That means that the 42 million people who were at risk of losing critical food assistance in November was because of the Republicans and Trump shutting the government down. And after an entire week of fucking limbo where people didn't even know where their next meal was going to come from or how they were going to feed their families or their children, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to fully fund SNAP food aid in November. Once the federal judge put down the order to make Trump pay out the fucking food stamps, Donald Trump was the one who appealed it to the Supreme Court and said that the government, not the people, the government was going to face more harm than the actual people who can't buy food if the food stamps were paid out. The Trump administration literally submitted a 22-page appeal to the Supreme Court so that none of you could get your food stamps. The opening sentence specifically says the district court's order threatens significant and irreparable harm to the government, which outweighs any claims to the plaintiffs. That wasn't enough. After the Supreme Court sided with him, Trump sent out a memo to all the states, telling the states to immediately undo full benefits that were already sent to families. Trump is demanding that the people who already got food stamps pay it back to the fucking government. And if the states don't get that money back, then they're going to get penalties if they refuse. And on top of that, Trump is using the Department of Transportation to cancel and delay thousands of flights across the United States. All the while using social media to spread misinformation because they post a picture talking about flight reductions at 40 airports. Thank a Democrat. Let's be very clear. It's Donald Trump and Republicans that are weaponizing hunger and delaying and canceling flights, making life more miserable for Americans. It's their ass and their ass alone.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, Africans. I hope you're faring well where you are. I really do hope you're faring well. So, let's talk about Trump. You know, Trump and the food stamps. Sometimes we can be making decisions. Or rather, let me tell you a proverb or a saying. There was once a goat. This was a very naughty goat. Disturbing the farmer. He would go and eat the neighbor's cassava. He would eat them. He would go and eat the neighbor's young maize plants. You call them corn in the US. Here in Africa, we call them maize. So the goat, the naughty goat, would go and eat the young maize. But the farmer would always chase it, have a rope and tie it. Now, the farmer was also living in a mud-thatched house. You find that kind of house, so many in Africa. Nowadays, the houses are kind of going away, right? So one day the goat said, today I want to make a tough lesson to this farmer. Why is always taking me out of my luxury, my eating of maize and my eating of cassava? So he decides to go, and now he wants to remove the mud, and slowly by slowly his agenda was to make the house collapse so that the farmer couldn't have a place to sleep. He goes ahead, and you know what he does? He starts wrapping himself on the walls of this farmer's mud-thatched house. He rubs himself. Yeah, of course, there are some particles dropping. But what the goat didn't know is that the wall was eating up its skin. And its skin was getting more and more irritating until it reached a time the goat had a puncture on one of its ribs, and it had to stop. And now the farmer, seeing that his goat would not survive, made the hardest decision. He called the butcher. And that was the end of the goat. What a story. So the goat here is likened to Donald Trump, right? You know, people forget that it is the citizens who elect the president. The president does not elect the citizens. It is God who elects the citizens. So he tries to reverse the situation. Now, the citizens are like the farmer, and the goat is Donald Trump. You see, with the food stamp, Donald Trump was trying to punish, or rather to make some economic appeal that would benefit a group of audience that he is interested in helping, right? Because I believe Donald Trump is a man of Christ. I believe he's a Christian, not man of Christ, but a Christian. He knows the Christian beliefs. He knows the Beatitudes, you know. Happy are those who are poor in spirit. Happy are those who give. The hands that gives are more blessed than the ones that take. He understands the principle, but still he goes ahead and goes against it. You know, removing food stamp was like the goat deciding that no, I'm going now to collapse the whole house. How dare you disturb me? Food stamps is something that has been helping Americans for such a long, long time. But Donald Trump saw that it was a wastage of cash. But presidents have been coming, presidents have been going, they've been not touching that. But he himself decided to, right? So Americans have reacted. Americans have shared their frustration. I want us to listen to them, and then I shall get back by the end of the video, of course, where we shall also have a deep, critical analysis. Let's dive in.
I'm at the point in my life where I feel like if this is not fucking rock bottom, I don't know what is. Because I told my director, I told everyone my situation. I have 6 days to figure out a second job, and then the job that I have now just cut me back to part-time. I have 3 kids. I'm about to be fucking homeless. And I don't know what to do. Like, I told them my situation, and they basically were like, let's kick this bitch while she's down. So now it looks like I'm gonna be finding 2 jobs instead of just having to find another one. I feel like this is never gonna get better. I fucking hate being an adult, and never in my life have I struggled this fucking bad, and this is the most money that I've ever made.
This isn't me trying to fearmonger, this is just me trying to prepare you. The US economy right now is like a Jenga tower with 18 fucking pieces missing. We are 1 piece pulled out away from everything just toppling down. AI was responsible for 40% of US GDP growth this past year and 80% of US stock growth. And the manufacturing industry has contracted for 7 consecutive months, while every other economic indicator is saying this is as bad as things have been since 2009. Now, when you have a sentence that says the economy is as bad as it's been since 2009, you are fucked. So again, this is not me fear-mongering, this is just me preparing you. Our economy is in a very bad place. If you have a job, hold on to it with everything you have.
America is falling behind. When an authoritarian regime attacks academia, science, news reporters, free speech, students, the best and the brightest leave. The same thing happened in Germany, in Russia, in Greece, and it's happening here. And this hurts the country because all of the talent is going elsewhere to help another country.
Bankruptcies are skyrocketing. Right now, more trucking companies are going bankrupt, more restaurants. Farm bankruptcies are up 35% higher than 2024. Hi, today is your update in the economy. It's October 12th, 2025. We are day 12 of the government shutdown. Our economy is collapsing every single day. Look at this. Airports are a disaster. Last time we had government shutdown in 2018, we lost $3 billion every week in travel alone. Let's not forget about the safety. Donald Trump fires over 4,000 government workers, and now museums and all that stuff in Washington are closed. Washington has an unemployment rate of 6% before the government shutdown. Expect a catastrophic crisis in Washington. We have lost over 1 million jobs this year. Inflation is 2.9%. Groceries are up 29%. We are in a recession in 22 states. We are in a recession in construction. We are in a recession in manufacturing. The stock market tanked on Friday, dropping 900 points. Drop a comment below if you want to stay on the algorithm to get your update on the economy and the stock market on Monday, October 13th.
I'm going to make a video that is very high level in finance, but needs to be redirected to as many eyeballs as possible, because this is eventually going to affect everyone, including yourself. And this is not a doom and gloom. This is simply just a high-level overview of what is coming and what the impacts will have on your life. I've made videos about this stuff before, but they've been very in-depth. So I want to make a video that is much higher level overview to give everyone an understanding for themselves and how they can prepare. On August 11th, the United States national debt surpassed $37 trillion. Now, you might ask, well, why is this really important? Well, October 2025, or September, I guess you could say the end of September, is when the national debt, or essentially the fiscal year of 2025, ended. And we ended at a debt of $37.6 trillion, which means in a month and a half, we added another $600 billion to the national debt. The United States economy, when you look underneath the surface, it isn't doing too hot. Again, I'm not going to go into the weeds, but when you look into the data, it's really not actually doing that hot. And with that, we have 10 companies, 10 tech companies, that are keeping the economy, quote unquote, afloat. Problem with this is it's very much looking very bubble-ish, you know, very 2001, very 1929-esque. Now, the problem with this is the United States government has way too much debt. We are at something called a debt to GDP ratio of 125%. I think it's a little more now, like 125.4%. The reality of the situation is, if the United States economy takes a turn downward because these companies aren't able to produce the results that they're essentially being invested into at the valuations that they have, or essentially you can put it in terms of like they're looking as shiny as they can be, and if they're not as shiny as they actually are later down the road, then everything in the market could essentially pop. Now, the problem with this is the United States economy, or the United States government, has been a backstop. The United States government does not have the financial capability to backstop this bubble popping. And the genuine concern is that if this bubble pops, the United States government will not be able to fund, it will not be able to bring in the money that is able to then fund the government, the debt itself. And so typical things like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the largest expenses to the government will have to start dwindling. Now, if this gets even more severe, how does this start to affect the socio-political sphere? And what if the money itself for things like subsidies of energy, like oil, or subsidies for things like food, what if that starts getting affected and farmers can't produce the food that we need, and oil companies can't produce the energy that we need, and we have essentially a sell-off and the inability to fuel the people that we have? What happens then? And genuinely, I would typically say, hey, the United States will be able to get through this. Humans have ingenuity, and we have the ability to see the problems, be able to work around the problems, create solutions to the problems. But the only caveat to this is when you have a problem, it tends to be something that's a little more concrete. But what we're talking about now is not a concrete problem. What we're talking about is a system failure. A point where the actual government, the entire thing that we know of collectively as what we all bank on as being secure, pops and it goes away. And that's the genuine concern. And so the spiral looks like this. The hype gets real in artificial intelligence that it's going to be able to boost productivity and help us grow out of the national debt. Then the productivity, the AI bubble pops instead of it being a real boom. And then that spirals over to the government not having the capital or the money to be able to fund the debt. And then the debt spirals, and then the debt causes the United States government to go insolvent. And then the entire populace turns into a socio-political, violent collapse. This definitely isn't a conversation you want to have over a dinner table. But again, more people need to be aware of this situation, because it is a process that is playing out right in front of our eyes. So let's talk about it now before the situation actually is around the corner.
The U.S. Department of Labor released a memo just a few days ago, explaining that Donald Trump's policies are in fact already ruining your lives, but they're about to actually make your life so much worse to the point where you may not even be able to purchase food. And again, this is coming from the United States Department of Labor under Donald J. Trump himself. His own Labor Department had to put out this memo or letter or whatever it is you want to call it to warn Americans that this guy is ruining your life. And of course, he's doing it, according to the Labor Department, by deporting all of the farm workers in the United States. We already have a massive shortage of labor on American farms. We have had farmers, representatives come out and tell us that. The farmers themselves have come out and told us that. We don't have people to go out there and do the work, to pick the crops, to till the fields, to plant the seeds. We don't have human beings to do that now because of Trump's policies. And a lot of those people voted for those policies. But as I've always said, I'm on the fence about sympathy because when the farmers go under, all of us are affected. If it were just them suffering the consequences of their votes, you get what you vote for, right? But their suffering leads to suffering for all of us. So, we're all in the same boat on this one because every human being on the planet has to have food to survive. And we're at a point, according to the Labor Department, you may not be able to afford it anymore. Here is what they said. The current and imminent labor shortage, exacerbated by the near total cessation of the inflow of illegal aliens, increased enforcement of existing immigration law, and global competitiveness pressures described below, presents a sufficient risk of supply shock-induced food shortages to justify immediate implementation. The lack of undocumented and documented workers results in significant disruptions to production costs and threatening the stability of domestic food production and prices for U.S. consumers.
All right, so SNAP is going away in November. There's no more money. I was at No Kings yesterday, and I was talking with a federal worker who runs a welfare office. And he was telling me that him and his staff have been training for de-escalation because there are going to be some very angry people going to that office asking why their kids are going hungry. They're going to be very angry, and this is going to be people's breaking point. Like that's just all there is to it. And especially for November, when it's supposed to be a time about food, especially around Thanksgiving. So all I'm going to say is if you see somebody grabbing up some food, trying to run away with it, no, you didn't. You didn't see shit. If you see somebody desperately trying to get food, you did not see a damn thing. You were paying attention to your children. You got focused on the products that you were browsing. You have a hard time hearing. I'm deaf in my left ear. I can't hear very well, especially directional hearing. My directional hearing is bad. Or maybe you're having some temporary blurry vision. You didn't see shit. You saw nothing.
I want us all on the same page. The reason there may not be any SNAP benefits in November is because Trump cut the budget to the USDA, which runs SNAP. Not only that, he basically gutted the emergency funding for SNAP. It went from billions of dollars to $500 million. Now, during Trumpy's first term, we had the longest shutdown in the history of this country, but SNAP benefits were never threatened. Why? Because the USDA was fully funded to include emergency measures, which paid for SNAP benefits. Now, millions of Americans may go without their SNAP benefits because of Trumpy's cuts. And remember, just a few months ago, they told us they were no longer going to report the status of hunger in this country. Because if you can't prove you're hungry, nobody's going to give a fuck.
Why aren't Americans out on the streets protesting Trump's policies like they do over in Europe? Well, I'll take a shot at answering that. I'm not an expert, but I have opinions on the subject. If you're willing to listen, I'm willing to share. To begin with, I think there's a significant group of Americans who are simply apathetic. They don't care. They're willing to let the next guy handle it. They don't want to stick their necks out. There is yet another group of Americans who are simply so beaten down by the struggle of day-to-day life in this country that they don't have the energy to care. If you're a banker, if you're an attorney, if you're an engineer or an architect, a medical professional, or if you're in one of the specialized trades like electrical or plumbing, you can make a very good life here. But if you're not, there's a good chance you're struggling. And when you come home at night after that second job, all you want to do is collapse on the couch and put your feet up. You don't want to go out marching. I think Americans tend to have a negative perception of protesters, probably stemming from the days of the Vietnam War, when college students were out in the streets clashing violently with police. Americans, despite all the braggadocio and bravado, are a fairly docile bunch of people. They do what they're told. Additionally, there can be negative consequences for protesting in this country. For example, American corporations are incredibly sensitive to how they are perceived in the public eye. If it became known that a group of their employees was out marching in the streets and waving signs, there might be negative consequences. Those employees could face severance. I had a boss one time tell me that he didn't want to see me out marching in gay pride parades. It happens. Additionally, there's the risk of physical harm. It wouldn't surprise me at all to hear that a group of MAGA brown shirts had descended on some protesters and tried to beat them up. And you have to remember that Americans are armed to the teeth. Guns are everywhere. In my state, you can carry a gun in your pocket without a permit or a license. But I think the biggest reason that Americans are not out protesting in the streets about Trump's policies is that they agree with them. I know that sounds incredible, but it's true. This is an aggrieved group of people who do not want the nation sharing its wealth with other countries. They feel like America has been taken advantage of by other countries. They are tired of seeing us give away our money and our resources to other countries. They don't want people from other countries coming over here to take advantage of the benefits and the opportunities that we have. They don't want to share. Back in World War I or World War II, you would have called these people isolationists. They don't want to get involved. They don't care what happens to Ukraine. They don't care what happens to Taiwan. They don't care what happens to Europe. They simply want to keep everything to themselves. In order to understand the American mindset, you have to know something about the way Americans live, because it is dramatically different than the way people in Europe live. In Europe, people read books. They go to museums. They travel. They're exposed to other cultures, other languages, other lifestyles. They're much more cosmopolitan in their perception of how the world exists and how we all get along with each other. Here in the States, it's completely the opposite. If you watched American TV commercials, you would think that we spend our discretionary time out rock climbing or kissing under the stars or roping cattle or doing any number of things that keep us engaged with each other. The fact is, we don't live like that at all. In America, people adore technology, and they have been seduced by media. And by media, I don't mean the news media, I mean the medium itself. Television, movies, the internet, video games. They spend a great deal of their discretionary time consuming media. And the problem with America's fascination with technology and its adoration of media is that it can be very isolating. For instance, in America, you don't have to go to an office building to work anymore. You can work from home. You don't have to go to the grocery store or to the department store to pick up your goods. You can just have them delivered. You don't have to go out to a restaurant to enjoy a meal. Have it delivered to your house. You don't have to go to a movie theater to watch a movie. Just stream it on your computer or your TV. So Americans spend a great deal of time home alone. They are not exposed to a multiplicity of cultures or languages or experiences. They're home alone. And because this technology allows them to do it, they can curate their information sources so that they only hear the information that they want to hear. In other words, their biases are confirmed over and over and over. So in Europe, where you have large groups of people living in close proximity to each other, with a variety of cultures, a variety of languages, and a variety of worldviews, here in the United States, you tend to have people living in silos and echo chambers of confirmation bias. Is it any wonder that Americans live in such extreme conditions? There's no middle ground in this country anymore. You're either extreme left or extreme right. The middle ground has been eliminated by the technology that enables people to be alone all the time. We've basically become a nation of angry sociopaths. And that's why people don't get out and protest, because they agree with Trump is doing. Trump appeals to their confirmation bias. The country is like an open wound, and Trump is quite literally the infection that is exploiting that open wound.
Not everything has two sides, okay? Not paying for food stamps is as fucking ugly as the mustache on my face. I'm doing this for Movember to try to raise money. The administration is denying food stamps to poor people for no good reason, just to cause pain that they think Democrats will have to own. Even if they were right, even if the courts hadn't condemned their position multiple times, even if the reality of the law were not plain in the reading of the language, even if they hadn't allowed food stamps to be paid for out of the reserve fund in the first shutdown in the Trump administration, and had the agency say it could be used for that, and then change that guidance out of convenience, even if all of the facts weren't so fucking obvious, the reason they're denying it is malignant. And I don't know how any conservative can like it. And I don't know how anybody on the left can't see how it's not enough to just say, this sucks. Take the message that what we need is something better. Feed the fucking poor people.
The reason why people are mad about food stamps is not because of children on food stamps or the elderly on food stamps or disabled people using food stamps. People are mad because there are over 40 million people using SNAP benefits. And if you think that all of those 40+ million people should be on food stamps, then you are beyond naive. The fact of the matter is there is a massive amount of people who actively decide to make food stamps a permanent part of their budget, even though they are completely able-bodied and completely able to work a full-time job. We're frustrated because we see people who are free riding off of our hard work. Yeah, I don't feel bad for able-bodied people who actively decided to take advantage of their neighbors by making their neighbors pay for their groceries, even though they should be paying for their groceries. I don't feel like a bad person for thinking that those people are wrong. It's not selfish of me to want to keep more of my own money. It's selfish of those people to expect others to pay for them when they are perfectly able to support themselves. They simply choose not to.
Y'all don't want to hear it because y'all just want to dance, but the real reason why they are really going to cut people food stamps off is because once people miss that first payment, you know what's going to happen? And this is coming from somebody, I used to be on food stamps. When I moved into my first apartment, I was able to get them, and then they cut me off. So I haven't got them again because I make too much money. But what is going to happen when those people miss that first payment? A lot of people are going to magically get a nice little notice saying that they need to recertify. And what that means is until those people recertify and get reapproved, they're not going to get food stamps anymore. And you want to know why I'm saying this? Is because out of all the government shutdowns we have ever had, when have y'all ever heard of food stamps being shut off? They're doing that shit intentionally, and obviously it's going to fall on the Democrats because it's making it seem like, oh, all these people are going without food stamps or EBT or SNAP, whatever the fuck you want to call it, simply because of a vote, when in actuality they wanted to cut those people off anyway. But this is the easiest way to do it, because if those people go without the benefit entirely, they're able to comb through and see who should actually be on food stamps, who needs to recertify, who is making too much money, and all of those people are going to be pressed for time, because not only are they not going to be able to recertify in time to get their next month's payment, because once you miss a payment, that's it. It's not as if like, oh, once they vote and the government comes off a shutdown, they'll instantly get that payment. That's not how government assistance works. They have to wait until the next month payday in order to receive back pay as well as a continuance.
Do not donate food, please, 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 please. Let's have an uncomfortable conversation. Nobody wants to talk about this, but it needs to be said. Do not donate food, please, 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 please. If you don't listen to anything else I've ever said, do not donate food if you have an active infestation in your home. Any kind of infestation, please do not donate food. With everything going on with SNAP benefits, a lot of people want to donate food, and that is so noble. But if you have any sort of infestation in your home, please do not donate. That doesn't just go for roaches and rats, that's a given, but that's not primarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pantry moths, weevils, carpet beetles, silverfish, things like this. If you have infestation in your home, please do not donate food. I grew up really poor. We went to the food bank a lot. We lined up in front of this church and that church to get free boxes of food. And so many times we brought home infestations that led to us having to just get rid of everything. And for someone who is already struggling, that is a devastating setback. Donating these items does more harm than good, because the bugs will travel from cabinet to cabinet and infect everything in their home, and they will have to throw everything away, even things that they had to work hard to buy for themselves.
I was just online and I seen somebody talking about how they were going to be in so much trouble because food stamps were shut down and they didn't get their $2,100 worth of food stamps this month. $2,100? I could pay 2 mortgages with $2,100. And before y'all come at me like y'all did on that last video when I said hamburger meat was cheap here, I live in rinky-dink, North Georgia, okay? My mortgage is $1,100. Now, I don't live in nothing big or fancy, but it suits me, okay? And my mortgage is $1,100. So you're telling me some people get $2,100 in food stamps? I'm completely mind blown. Like, how many kids do you have to be able to get $2,100 worth of food stamps? And, you know, they say you have to work now to get them. So, if you're working and you're getting $2,100 worth of food stamps, what are y'all eating every day? I ain't judging. I truly want to know. $2,100. I'm just,
So, after carefully listening to Donald Trump share his thoughts and also listening to the lamentation and the frustrations of the Americans, I believe it is important and it is necessary that we discuss the importance of food stamps, right? Many times here in Africa, we are told that America is the land of opportunity. Many times we are told that work hard and go to America, right? We would have neighbors, we would have family members, you know, who made it there. And we will be told, you see, so-and-so did it, so work hard and go there as well. But you know what? Not everyone, not everyone is having the same line of luck. Or, blessings are not taken from one point. Blessings can only be taken where God designated it to happen, right? That's one thing that our African parents must always understand. but they really don't. So we've always had that mind, America is the land of opportunity. But the Americans, some of them, actually many of them, are living worse lives than the rich and the average life here in Africa. I'm telling you this for sure. The infrastructure might be good, it might be really good, but some Americans, I believe many of them, or let me just say some, Africans here who are rich are living better lives than them, right? So this tells you that there is a wealth gap and there is a need for the government itself to help support its huge population. Because America is a very big country, very massive country, right? So when the food stamp and the SNAP benefits and the EBT were brought, it was there to ensure that those people who are underprivileged, the immigrants, the elderly, people who now cannot work, the veterans, people who have been soldiers, who have fought for the country, you know, people who have disabilities could find a way to survive. That was the essence of EBT and the SNAP and the food stamps. Now, if it is removed, it's like removing the very essence of helping these individuals, right? Because tell me, how would a crippled man go and work? Because one of the things Donald Trump said is that for you to get the EBT and the SNAP benefits, you should work a certain number of hours in a week. A person who is crippled, how will they work? Maybe a person who is blind. Let me just say, imagine all kinds of impairments and imagine their limitations, and you are being asked to work in order to receive a benefit. You see, it's hard. It's really hard. Americans, Trump is making it easy for the rich. The rich find it easy to thrive in America. But the average and the less fortunate find it extremely hard. And a way that they could just thrive through it is through this SNAP and EBT, right? And so we Africans back home, we need to understand one thing. America is not all glitters, as we have been thinking. America also has its own challenges. It has its own limitation. It has its own problems, right? Food stamps are hurting people whom it shouldn't be hurting. There's no way you expect a veteran to go and work, to go and beg for food. No. That system was established to help them. When it is removed, it's going to bring chaos. It's going to bring instability. It's going to increase the poverty rates. Who knows? It might even increase the mortality rate. People might die, and also it might cause a low life expectancy in the United States of America, because things follow a chain of events and things are always in a domino effect. It starts with a very small thing. It goes all the way to triggering the largest, and the largest one falls. When the largest one falls, now you can't do nothing. Prevention was to prevent the smaller. If you prevented it, nothing big would happen. Removing the food stamp and removing the SNAP benefit and the EBT is something that will have a huge ripple effect on the America's economy and the people of America themselves. Let's give it time and let's hope that everything goes well. Of course, I myself and you, I believe also, we can't wish people bad. What benefit is it if we wish them bad? How do I benefit? Or how do you benefit if you wish them bad? Unless you are just an intrinsically evil person, right? So I want us to listen to this. I want us to... I'll stop here, guys. And I hope that you have gained value. If you have, kindly subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comment section. I'd really love to know what you think, and see you in the next one. Stay positive. Yeah.